want Republicans dead.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
So, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
Michael Gerhardt is our guest today on the Enemies List. He is a professor at the University of North Carolina School of Law, and he's an expert on impeachment. And this is a really fortuitous moment because yesterday the Republicans filed articles of impeachment against Joe Biden in the House. And we're about to go on the merry-go-round of impeachment one more time. And no one is better and more knowledgeable than Michael Gerhardt on this subject. Michael, welcome to the Enemies List.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your having me.
Well, I wanted to ask you right off the bat, you testified in the first Trump impeachment trial about the validity of impeachment. Where do you rate and sort of score this impeachment effort? We don't have that many cases of impeachment to judge by, 2 for Trump, 1 for Clinton. Nixon was they were in the warm up in the bullpen warming up, but how do you scale this particular impeachment effort that the Republicans in the House are putting forth?
I think this is historic, what the Republicans did yesterday to authorize an impeachment inquiry against the president without any evidence.
Right.
Historically, we can look back. And with Richard Nixon, the House actually authorized an impeachment inquiry against Nixon, but only after 2 years of investigations have produced credible evidence of presidential wrongdoing.
Right.
The same thing happened with Bill Clinton. The same thing happened with Donald Trump. But yesterday, the House did it without any such evidence. In fact, many of the House members who voted for the inquiry have publicly said there is no evidence yet of any impeachable misconduct by Joe Biden.
So this is a fishing expedition, as I think many Americans believe. Yes. And it's all hung on this idea that somehow, while Joe Biden was a private citizen, he was in some way involved with his son's business dealings, and it's like, what's the third step? What's the presidential high crime or misdemeanor that they're trying to find here? I'm not a lawyer, but the disconnect here seems enormous to me.
Well, there is this disconnect. In fact, at the one hearing that has been held that pertain to impeachment, possible impeachment misconduct by the president, the Republicans' own witness said that there's not evidence here to show the commission of an impeachable offense. So that's their own witness, and nothing has changed since then, except we have a new speaker who has certainly engaged in all sorts of hyperbolic rhetoric about possible presidential misconduct, but has not produced the evidence to back that up.
Well, and our new speaker, like our old speaker, I think we all know that he is doing this at the behest of Donald Trump, who is still angry that he is a twice impeached president of the United States and wants to muddy the water, I think, on Biden. So the legal proceedings, the processes of this, they're going to put it out into the committees. The committees are going to investigate this. What do you think the time frame on this looks like from a procedural and legal perspective? So the question I'm really getting to is, when do the show trial hearings begin?
They will, I assume they'll begin any day now.
Okay.
And I think there'll be hearings in 3 different committees. Not coincidentally, during a presidential election year.
Odd how that happens.
And so one would expect that probably come next fall, the House may proceed to actually try to impeach President Biden. But there's no credible evidence. We will hear a lot about Hunter Biden,
Sure.
but Hunter Biden isn't the president of the United States.
Nope.
And saying that Hunter Biden is a bad fellow doesn't provide a foundation for Joe Biden's impeachment. But it does, as you suggested, give Donald Trump what he wants, which I think is gutting impeachment of any seriousness.
Right. Yeah, I think that you actually got to it better than I did, because in my head I was like, oh, he wants to just do this because he's trying to like say, look, I'm not the only bad guy. But I think that because Trump probably realizes he'll put himself in the way of getting impeached again, he wants to diminish the shock value of it and the pain of it. So in other impeachments that we've witnessed, the two Trump impeachments and the Clinton situation, as you go forward through these things, there does come a moment where where the managers of the impeachment have to present the evidence to the House. And I'm not asking you to like predict a vote, because I think I know where the vote will go in today's, sort of fallen world of the Republican Party. But if you were making the case, if you were trying to do this, how do you hang a case together that's based on emails from Hunter Biden's laptop from a moment where Joe Biden was not in political office? I'm struggling with how they connect the absurdity here.
Well, I think they have not connected the absurdity. I think what they're hoping is by having had this House vote yesterday to authorize an impeachment inquiry, they're hoping that will give them more power to conduct a fishing expedition. In fact, a few members of the House actually said, well, now that we've authorized the impeachment inquiry, and I'm paraphrasing, but
right.
They've essentially, well, I hope they find something. I mean, and that's not how it's supposed to work.
Right.
With Richard Nixon, for example, there was 2 years of investigation that produced credible evidence before the House authorized an impeachment inquiry.
Yeah, and I suspect that this is. I suspect a lot of this inquiry is more for the Fox News audience, more for the Republican base audience than it is to conduct a real inquiry. One of the things that I think is truly fascinating is that the people on point for this, Jim Jordan and Jim Comer, do not strike me as the smartest creatures God put on this earth in this thing. Comer keeps coming out with things like, oh my God, Joe Biden, loaned Hunter money to buy a truck or whatever it was. All these small ball things. Can they hang a case together on that stuff? I'm having trouble seeing it.
Well, they'll claim they have based a case on that. But I think one of the things to watch is how there's no effort to build up bipartisan support. This is simply playing to the base. And I think all next year we will likely hear a lot of playing to the base. And that's not how impeachment inquiries build trust and gain legitimacy.
Right. And in prior efforts, you had, particularly in the Nixon effort, you had plenty of Republicans who were willing to say, we've looked at the evidence, it's serious, it's real, it's meaningful, and we're going to go to the president, like people like Howard Baker, who went to the president and said, it's over, stop. But in this case, I don't see how you end up with any Democrat who's going to look at this and say, I'm going to participate in a show trial. I'm going to play along with what is obviously a charade.
I think that's right. I don't see why Democrats, and for that matter, why Republicans would want to suggest there's anything legitimate about this, because among other things, what Republicans who voted yesterday to authorize this impeachment inquiry have done is they've created a precedent of the House authorizing an impeachment inquiry based on nothing.
Right.
And that can come back to haunt you.
So yesterday, Hunter Biden, who had been asked by the committee to come and testify, and when he said, okay, they said, no, we don't want you to testify publicly. We want to do it behind closed doors. Hunter is clearly, in their minds, the center of the entire thing. what did you think of that whole that maneuver that Hunter did yesterday? Because I mean, I thought it kind of called out the lie of what the Republicans are doing here, by saying, you want me to testify? Happy to do so. Because he kind of penetrated the whole bubble yesterday and said, my dad had nothing to do with my business.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think what Hunter Biden was doing was, of course, part of the political theater of all this.
Sure.
But I think that what Hunter Biden was doing was calling the Republicans bluff. He was saying, look, I'll testify, but only in public.
Right.
Ironically, Republicans, including Jim Jordan, responded, no, we typically do this behind closed doors. Well, when that was done behind closed doors by the Intelligence Committee, back when Donald Trump was president, Jim Jordan was one of the most vocal people saying that's illegitimate.
Right.
So he's been on both sides of this question. But the point is, why not hold it in public? That's authorizing an impeachment inquiry usually is followed by public hearings based on testimony that's already been given and evidence that's already been gathered that have established there is the real possibility of presidential misconduct.
Right.
And again, we don't have that. What we're going to get, I think, is a lot of partisan theater that is aimed, of course, to hurt Joe Biden, help Donald Trump during an election year.
So, we've talked a little bit about how this is a fishing expedition. And while Hunter Biden's laptop is for MAGA Republicans, the holy grail of all evil in the universe, what else are they going to go after? What else do you think they're going to look for when they start this fishing expedition? I feel like it's going to dig into. I feel like it's going to go into, the current operations of the White House and everything else. So and they'll broaden this to the point where it's unmanageable.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I think that they would likely head in that direction. They'll hammer whatever issues they think will appeal to their base and energize their base, and they will likely engage in all sorts of hyperbolic rhetoric about the president. But that doesn't establish a real case, a credible case of misconduct on behalf of Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these committees do have tremendous power, though, to go after, to subpoena documents, to subpoena testimony, to subpoena the relevant, records from all kinds of things. I mean, I'm sure we're going to find out that, Joe Biden put $2.95 on his Visa card for a Dairy Queen ice cream cone at some point. But, it's sort of like, somebody put it to me yesterday. It's like, think of it as the opposition research material for the Trump campaign being paid for by the taxpayers through the investigation.
That's not at all a bad analogy. Jamie Raskin said back in September at the one hearing that's been held so far as part of this so-called impeachment inquiry, that this is like arresting Hunter Biden for speeding and then holding Joe Biden accountable for that.
Right.
And that's basically all we're getting right now.
So these things, when Trump was impeached twice, they mounted an unbelievably vigorous set of legal defenses in the courts trying to stop the investigations and the subpoena power of Congress to investigate Trump. And I don't recall directly like how successful they were in that, but do you expect the Biden folks are going to have to mount a court strategy as well, just to keep this from becoming, the fishing expedition from hell?
It's possible. What's going to likely happen is there'll be subpoenas directed against Joe Biden and others, and those subpoenas will be challenged in court. And I think what Republicans are hoping, and they basically said this yesterday, is that by having launched an impeachment inquiry formally, they think that will enhance or strengthen their power to conduct an investigation. But again, their investigation is a fishing expedition.
Yeah, it's about it's the Seinfeld joke. It's an investigation about nothing.
Well, part of the irony here is that some Republicans are arguing that they're stonewalling on behalf of the president, but there's no stonewalling because the president isn't producing the kind of response and evidence they want to have in order to say the president has committed misconduct.
Yeah, I find that I keep finding this question of the legitimacy of the investigation going back to one big question. And it's never, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are the expert on this, to my knowledge, there's never been, we have a case where the conduct that they are investigating on the part of Hunter Biden, making an allegation without evidence of a connection from Hunter's business to his father, while Joe Biden was a private citizen. There's no precedent whatsoever where the actions of a private citizen who became president have an overlay on the impeachability of that person. Am I right in this? I'm really struggling.
You're right. This is historic for that other reason, which you just pointed out. So I think in order to make a case, what Republicans are going to have to connect are events that Biden experienced, that Joe Biden sort of engaged in while he was a private citizen, that somehow is now connected to the presidency by virtue of the current president's denial of whatever it is the Republicans are hypothesizing. So that's how the dots would be connected. But if Joe Biden has not engaged in any kind of serious misconduct as a private individual, it certainly doesn't build a case against him later when he's become president that he somehow has committed an impeachable offense.
Right. And I think that's the important thing for folks to remember, is that this is a political exercise. I mean, we really are, Michael, in a very new world. Impeachment has always had a political character to it because we have a partisan system. But in this case, it's not just a political character to it. It's a campaign tool now that the House Republican caucus is using to try to disrupt the 2024 presidential campaign, not a legitimate investigation.
I agree with you. I think that's what this has been and may likely continue to be. And in fact, yes, it's true. All presidential impeachments, and we haven't had many, begin for partisan or political reason. But what then ensues is the gathering of real concrete evidence. And then at that point, there may be an impeachment inquiry authorized. Here we have the impeachment inquiry authorized. And in fact, I think what we're seeing is that we've got an outcome that Republicans want. They're just looking for a process to justify it.
That's it. Yeah, they've already decided the case. They're just trying to hang together a skein of evidence and allegations that will hold up just long enough to keep a floor vote together. In prior impeachments, there's always been a political backlash at the end in a lot of ways. I mean, the shield wall around Trump now of Republicans who will never question him again is in part because he survived 2 impeachment processes. They believe he is invulnerable. The Republicans impeached Bill Clinton and faced pretty much electoral wipeout not long after, where their own foibles became the centerpiece of a lot of things. Where do you see this going I know you're not a political hack like me, but do you see this having a political benefit if the case ends as we think it will, which is there's no evidence, there's no smoking gun, there's not even a gun anywhere in this thing? I mean, the lawyers on the committee have to be a little bit like, oh, this is kind of embarrassing, right?
Well, it's hard to see that this leads to anything good. It likely will please Donald Trump a great deal. In fact, he's been calling for this essentially since 2019. And the allegations that Trump made as part of his defense were made against Joe Biden back in 2019. They were discredited then.
Right.
They haven't gained any credibility since. But this will please Donald Trump. It'll please his most ardent supporters. That's where this is likely to go.
Yeah.
But if it were legitimate, it would be conducted in a way to try and gain bipartisan support through objectively verifiable misconduct on the part of Joe Biden.
Right.
As of yet, Republicans themselves, Republican House members themselves, have said there's no evidence yet.
Well, it is unfortunately going to be like driving past a car wreck. People are going to watch it because you can't. This is the nuclear bomb of sanctions against any president that Congress has in their portfolio. I mean, and the founders intended this to be, for the proverbial high crimes and misdemeanors, not for. We have a vague idea of that something might be on this guy's laptop. I want to just say, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Michael. I appreciate your insight on all this. I think we will probably be talking about this, unfortunately, more in the new year. But we really appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for coming on the enemies list.
Well, I really appreciate your having me. I thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
Hey folks, it's our first rant after the new year is upon us, and I would like to welcome you all back to the enemies list. But I do have some words today to say about, the usual guy, Donald Trump. The king of the enemies list, the peak of the enemies list, the apotheosis of all the things that make someone be on the enemies list. You would think that over the holidays, Trump might consider a brief break from the insanity, the lunacy, the conspiracy, and the raving, but no, you would be mistaken. In this week that I took off, what we saw was Donald Trump at the worst of Donald Trump. This is, the usual space of insanity. And these truths attacking Jack Smith, attacking Joe Biden, attacking Liz Cheney, all of them have added up to a picture of something that the Republican Party is going to have to own in about 3 weeks when he starts winning these primaries. And I don't expect anything better of Donald Trump. I don't expect anything good out of Donald Trump. But what I am going to look forward to is the absolute painful and agonizing defenses of Donald Trump that will be undertaken by all the normie Republicans coming up. But I just want to kick off the new year right. It's going to be a long fight ahead, a grueling road ahead. And there are going to be days when you think, oh my God, Trump's too powerful, he's too much, he's too big. Never forget. Go back and read the Truth Social posts from over the Christmas holiday. When you tell people to rot in hell for Christmas, it really is not an indicator that you're a sane person. Anyway, folks, thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time.